Welcome to the NGConnects Podcast, where national gypsum team members and industry leaders share insights and advice to solve construction and design challenges. We obsess over the details to help you build better. Hi, I'm Chris Whitmire with the marketing department at National Gypsum Company. And in this episode, I talked to Scott Hughes about understanding abuse versus impact-resistant gypsum board. Scott Hughes is a construction design manager for National Gypsum Company, focusing on the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions. With 26 years in the building products industry, Scott provides solutions for architects and specifiers by reviewing specifications, selecting appropriate products for specific applications, and presenting AIA-approved education courses. One of the things we run into when selecting abuse or impact-resistant gypsum boards is grouping the two together in the specification, which is a big no-no. It's really important not to group the two together because it can cause confusion and could lead the contractor to choose a product based on its cost rather than its function. Scott, before jumping into this first question, let's touch on why the National Gypsum team is qualified to offer expert advice on this topic, abuse-resistant versus impact-resistant gypsum board. I think it's really important to note to the audience members, National Gypsum has an abuse and impact-resistant gypsum board, both on the paper face side and on the glass mat side of things. All four of those products are part of our Purple family of products, which offer outstanding moisture, mold, and mildew resistance. Just want to make note of that. Also, this discussion, this topic, is not an easy one. So I also just want to make note that if any of our audience members need some extra advice, extra help, you have our 1-800-NATIONAL Construction Services Department, just an outstanding team. Also, we've got our CDMs, our construction design managers, which you're a part of. You oversee the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic.
Right.
We also have folks in the West, the Southwest, and the Gulf, and the Southeast. So just again, I want to make sure the audience members know that we have great resources, great people to help you as we get into this discussion regarding abuse-resistant and impact-resistant gypsum boards. So, Scott, let's start today's discussion with just identifying and differentiating three products: standard gypsum board, impact-resistant gypsum board, and abuse-resistant gypsum board. What are the differences between those three products?
Sure. Well, regular gypsum board's been around for 100 years. Gold Bond Building Products has been manufacturing that for this year is 100 years.
Yeah.
Standard type paper, standard kind of weights to those products. Over time, there was a demand for something a little bit more robust. So abuse-resistant products and impact-resistant products in the last 25, 30 years came into the marketplace. So we would have a standard board. We'd go to an abuse-resistant, which would be the next level up in resisting damage. And how we do that is we use a heavy-duty paper, or in our fiberglass mat line, we use a heavy-duty fiberglass mat. And we'll get a little bit more into that in just a second. The other thing we do to make an abuse-resistant product is we actually make the core a little bit denser, a little heavier. Mm-hmm. When we manufacture a drywall, we actually use air to kind of push our slurry out so bubbles pop in that air or in the slurry. With the abuse-resistant, we slow it down so we have less bubbles popping, which means less voids in the drywall and therefore more weight, more density. And that's good for abuse-resistant. So heavy-duty paper, a little bit denser core, and then the impact, which is the best of the best, is everything abuse is, heavy-duty paper, denser core, but we add a fiberglass scrim at the back side of that board. It's actually in the core, but on the back side of the board. And that fiberglass scrim, I call it the baseball bat stopper, right? You get a baseball bat, swing as hard as you can at it, and you might put a little dent in that drywall, but you're not going to go right through it with the baseball bat. Both abuse and impact, as mentioned earlier, do come paper-faced, which is our mold-resistant, moisture-resistant XP family, or our EXP family, and that signifies that it's not a paper-based product, it's actually a fiberglass mat. So that's the kind of the levels: regular, abuse, and then the best of the best is the impact.
So it's manufactured differently, it performs differently, and I think it's also really important to note there's a cost difference between those three products.
Yep.
So you touched on this a little bit ago. How is gypsum board tested for abuse and impact resistance, and how do products manufactured by Gold Bond, how do those products rate?
Yeah. So ASTM C1629 is the ASTM standard for abuse and impact resistant drywall. In order for a manufacturer to promote their products as abuse or impact resistant, we have to pass 3 or 4 tests. It depends. So for abuse resistance, there's 3 tests that we do. The first is surface abrasion. Surface abrasion, if you can picture a little wire brush, maybe an inch by an inch and a half long, I mean, a very stiff wire brush. You wouldn't be brushing your teeth with this thing, right? With that brush is laid on top of your sample, and then on top of that is 20 pounds of weight. So, I mean, a 20-pound dumbbell has got some weight to it, right? So you stick that on there, and then they cycle back and forth 50 times on your surface of your board, and they're measuring how far that wire brush digs into the board. The good news is, with the abuse and impact resistance, since they're both the same heavy-duty paper or heavy-duty fiberglass mat for the EXP line, we score the perfect score of 3. So now what does that mean? Well, there are levels of each one of these tests, too. So I'll get into the other tests just a second. But each test has a level. Level 1, passed the test. Level 2, did better than pass. Level 3 is the best of the best. So if you have a level 3, it doesn't get any better than that. It performs really, really well. So the abrasion-resistant test, everybody's a level 3, whether it's abuse or impact. Then we have the next test, which is the impact test. Think of teeing up a golf ball, smacking it as hard as you can with the driver into a wall about 2 feet away, right? So you're really this very small sphere smacking into the board, and they're measuring the depth. You know, how much depth, depending on how hard it's hit, is penetrates into the board itself. With abuse resistant and impact resistant, whether it's paper faced or fiberglass mat, they all perform the same, and that's really well. They pass the test at a level 1. There's really no other differences there. Then we get into the 2 tests that really matter when we get into impact resistance. So the third test is what we call the soft body impact test. I like to call it one kid throwing another kid into the wall test, right? So you've got 60 pounds of pellets in a punching bag. If you think of the gym, like Rocky's in his gym training, they put 60 pounds of pellets in that, and they swing it back, and then they slam it into the wall right between the studs. And they're measuring how much force it takes to actually break the board. So with abuse resistant, they pass, but we would expect better with impact resistant because we've added that mesh to the product. So the mesh actually creates a level 3. So it's perfect, what you want with that board slamming in. Then there's the last test is only done for impact, although we do report some for abuse. Abuse isn't really meant for this last test, but we do report a passing number for it, level 1. But the impact is, think of the doorknob at home, and then you take the door and you slam it in the wall, and it doesn't have the stopper at the bottom, so the doorknob just hits the drywall.
See that all the time.
That's what this test is. And what they do is they have this little hammer thing with this cylinder on it, and they put a whole bunch of barbells on it, and they just put a lot of weight. They pull it back and keep slamming it in there until you eventually break the board. So with the abuse resistance, most of them do a level 1. But again, if you're worried about things going into the wall, you really need to go to impact resistant, and that's the level 3. Significant performance difference between a level 1 and a level 3 in that category.
Okay. You'd mentioned, we talked a little bit earlier about paper-faced versus fiberglass mat. Give me some examples of maybe where you would see, the paper-faced gypsum board products. That's the high abuse, the high impact. That's part of our XP family of purple products.
Right.
And then we also have EXP Interior Extreme,
right,
impact resistant, and we also have EXP Interior Extreme abuse resistant.
Right.
Give me some scenarios and maybe where you would see the paper face versus the glass mat product.
Yeah, there's 2 major ones. The first one that first comes to mind would be kind of a weather issue. So if you're building the building, constructing the building, and the windows aren't in or the roof isn't tight yet, but we need to start hanging drywall, you can do that with our EXP, the fiberglass mat products. We'll guarantee up to 12 months of exposure to wind and rain and humidity blowing through there without the building being tight. So that's kind of the number one place we see is we know that we're going to have that condition during construction, so we're going to use a product that has some kind of an interior warranty. And again, like you mentioned, you can get a standard fiberglass mat and then abuse and impact resistant as well. So if that's the way you're going and that's the way it's designed, good to go. But if you're not concerned as much about that, most of the projects are going to be our XP line. Mm-hmm. And that's the treated paper face, which is just fine most conditions. Now, we don't guarantee it can be installed with the building open, right? But if it's closed in like it should be, you'll be just fine with our mold and moisture resistant XP line of products.
Good explanation. So why specify abuse and impact resistant boards? And what's really important for the architects to keep in mind when they're specifying that? And you've been out in the field and seen examples. I've been out in the field and seen examples where maybe the architect has specified abuse/impact. Maybe just touch on that a little bit more, get into some greater detail. And again, that's a big no-no, and here's why.
It is. Well, so the number one thing you need to consider when you're whether regular drywall, abuse, or impact is the size and quantity of people in your building. So is it a K through 12 school? Is it like an elementary school where the kids, although the elementary school kids are getting pretty big. So let's go, preschool, right? So the young kids, small, probably abuse resistance just fine. We know things are going to get banged in the wall, might scuff it up. Abuse resistance is really about scratch resistance, abrasion resistance, running down the hall with a backpack, scraping the wall. I travel for a living. You travel for a living. We're always pulling luggage behind us, and we're accidentally banging into things with it. That's where abuse really does shine above a standard drywall. A room like we're in now, we don't need abuse or impact. We're not worried about anybody banging the walls. But if you're actually concerned, high schools, dormitories, right, higher ed with a lot of volume of people,
psychiatric wards,
sports facilities, rowdy sports people, right, locker rooms, things like that, where things are going to actually punch, kick, whatever, get through the wall, that's where that impact really shines. That mesh stops that from happening. Important to note, it's not bulletproof, so we don't put it in between jail cells, or it's not a security board like that. There are times when you have to go CMU. But a lot of times you can get away with the gypsum boards. A lot more flexibility to it.
So abuse, that's more surface abrasion resistance. Impact resistance is, you're actually you're not going to penetrate that wall cavity.
Well said. You're going to hit it once, you'll never hit it again.
Good deal. Good deal. You talked a little bit about spaces and where to specify abuse and impact. Anything else you want to elaborate on there? Hospital corridors, gurneys, banging up against?
It is, yeah. And again, it really does depend on quantity, size of people going through the building. But sports facilities, a lot of the K through 12 architects I deal with are doing abuse or impact. And the question always is, well, is abuse okay or do I need to go impact? And there is a little gray area there, to be honest. There really is. I mean, what are we expecting to happen to those walls over a large period of time or a long period of time? So a lot to consider. I would tell you dormitories, multifamily that have high move-in, move-outs, places like that where you really need, people are moving furniture and they don't care, so they're banging into walls. The impact is a lot easier to fix for maintenance folks than any other product out there because there's a little dent compared to a blowout.
Sure. How about installation guidelines, recommendations? Does it install any differently than standard gypsum board? Fastener patterns any different?
Right. It's the beautiful thing. So our abuse and impact resistant products have the grid marks on them. So all the spots where you would have to, whatever fastener pattern you're using, whether it's Max 12, Max 16, are all marked out on the board. You're going to score and snap it just like standard drywall. Now, the impact resistant does have that mesh in the back. It is a thick mesh. I mean, it needs to be to perform. So they will, contractors will need to make their marks and score and snap through the back pretty good first. But you're not using a saw. You can still do it with a utility knife. So
no issues there, concerns, right?
No, you paint it the same way.
Right through that.
The other beautiful thing, too, with it is if you only need that impact or abuse resistant for the first 4 or 5 feet of the building, well, let's say 4 feet, just put it there, and you can go standard drywall on top of that, and that's just a standard joint between the two boards. If you've got something else like wood or CMU and you don't need it at 4 feet, you want to go to drywall, now you got an ugly control joint to have to deal with. Don't have to worry about that when it's gypsum to gypsum.
If you have the EXP, will you have to level 5 that?
Good point.
Because it's a glass mat product?
If it's going to be visible to the public after construction's over, you're going to have to skim coat it. It's got a rough's the wrong word. It's got a texture to it.
Sure.
Versus a very smooth paper, and you just can't hide that texture with paint and primer. You've got to have to
skim coat that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What else? What architects, contractors, is there anything else that they need to know in regards to either specifying abuse and impact, installing abuse versus impact?
There's one critical thing, and it's a conversation I have with every architectural call on this subject, is please separate the specification. If you're going to have, if you're going to have abuse resistant and impact on the job, You're going to have to specify, you're going to have 2 sections in the spec book, right? Don't ever put the words abuse and impact in the same sentence.
Why do you think they do that? Just lack of knowledge?
Just don't know. Lack of knowledge, right? Lack of knowledge. There is a significant performance difference between the two, and you mentioned in the beginning a price difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if they see abuse impact resistant, they're going to pick abuse all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we really did need that impact resistant because you're going to, again, you're going to give up a lot of performance between the two. So separate the specifications, and then also on the drawings, make sure that we're actually specifying where the abuse and impact go on the drawings so the contractors know how to load the job and install it properly in the right areas.
Yeah, well said, Scott.
Key issues.
So, Scott, are abuse and impact resistant products, both on the paper face and the glass mat side, all 4 products are part of our purple family of products. Why don't you touch on what that represents?
Sure. Purple indicates that our products are treated for mold and moisture resistance. So we'll start with the XP line, which is the paper version of the two. We treat the paper, front and back paper, with an antifungal product, and that product will kill mold on contact. It's FDA approved for human consumption, so it ain't going to hurt a human being, but the molds obviously don't like it. So there's an ASTM test. It's a 28-day test. You have a sample in a picture a 20-gallon fish tank, something like that. You've got dirt in the sample. We've got mold spores in this tank. We've got the perfect temperature and the perfect humidity flowing in there for 28 days to support the growth of mold. And they look at your product after the 28 days and they hold their nose. No, I'm kidding. They actually look at the product and see if the mold spores are growing. Are they, reproducing on the product? If they're not, you get a perfect score of 10. So all of our paper face products get the perfect score of 10 in that very hard to pass mold test. On the EXP line, so our fiberglass mat lines, we don't need to treat the fiberglass mat because it's not a food source for mold. So we pass, right, no paper. Paper's the food source, so we pass without any flying colors. We just don't need to treat it in any way. There's nothing in that product that supports the growth of mold. So we are a mold and moisture resistant product line with our XP as well as EXP line.
Well said. That'll wrap up today's episode. I once again want to thank Scott Hughes for joining us today to talk about this very important topic, abuse-resistant versus impact-resistant gypsum board. Scott, it's been again, pleasure having you. I want to thank you for your time, and it's great to see you. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. All the resources we've mentioned today will be added to the show notes. All our podcasts can be found on your favorite platform or by visiting nationalgypsum.com/podcasts. If you have any questions or an idea for a topic, email us at podcast@nationalgypsum.com. National Gypsum Company is the exclusive service provider of reliable, high-performance building products manufactured by its affiliate companies and marketed under the Gold Bond, Proform, and Permabase brands. The National Gypsum name has been synonymous with high-quality, innovative products and exceptional customer service since 1925. The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only. For specific building or design questions, please consult with the 1-800-NATIONAL Construction Services team or your regional National Gypsum Construction Design Manager. Always use products in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations.